The Acolyte episode 6 is tomorrow night, and we have some interesting news, and then we're going to round off this video by addressing a creative decision for this series we've actually seen in Star Wars before, one which fans don't agree with. So right off the bat, a new interview with Leslye Headland has dropped, some very interesting reveals, and I was very surprised how candid she is about just spilling the beans. The Acolyte showrunner sat down with the Mary Sue and was asked questions about some recent controversies and also major reveals. The first one that really stands out is she admits Sol knows that May is on the ship and that it's not Osha. Sol is aware and he's not bothered by it. And this gets to the heart of something that she really wants fans to know going into the last 3 episodes. Sol's motives are very much the mystery of the Acolyte, not who the helmeted Sith was, not Qimir. She says that was secondary. Sol is the person we should be focused on. And I'm starting to think he is the one Jedi who knew the power of the Force Dyad and might have wanted to train the twins as apprentices using the Jedi as a guise. And as I've said before, I think Sol has something to do with the dark side. His history with Qimir is very interesting and a big question mark. And I think the theory that Sol has nefarious intentions is going to be true. Headland seems to imply it. She doesn't reveal too much, but we shouldn't be quick to underestimate Sol's knowledge and power. So, on the subject of Qimir, Leslye Headland surprisingly said she wasn't too hung up about this reveal because it's not what the show is most concerned about. It's Sol and the twins and their past. And like I've said multiple times, there is more to both Qimir and Sol, and she knew the fandom wouldn't be too surprised, which tells me there is truth to a bigger Sith working in the shadows. Leslye also says that one line from the 5th episode is more important than we know. When Qimir says to Sol, "You brought her here," it's a line she worked on and rewrote many times. It is meant to convey how the Sith, according to Headland, are, quote, counterculture to the Jedi. They're everything the Jedi impose on them, not how they define themselves. Leslye says it's an acknowledgement of how the Jedi are the ones who bring children into fights they're not meant to be in, and they raise Padawans from a young age into the Jedi Order and brainwash them. The Sith are not blameless, but it's a moment Headland felt needed to be placed. A moment we see the Jedi as the ones who can also do wrong. So, another fascinating thing she addressed is the Ki-Adi Mundi controversy. Headland revealed that she saw the backlash online, and she finds it, well, funny, but deflects that decision down to Pablo Hidalgo, the keeper of the law at Lucasfilm, and someone who is consulted for information pertaining to what's canon and what's not. She said it was very much his choice. They felt it was fine to neglect previous information, mostly from Star Wars Legends, and Leslye says, quote, "Pablo is the person I go to and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. I think it works for these narrative reasons, but you let me know. I'm not totally up to date with how you guys feel about it as a studio." And of course here she's referring to Lucasfilm, and it's something that Pablo Hidalgo gave her the green light for. There was an opportunity for Lucasfilm to stop it, but they said no, this is a good idea. Of course many fans disagree. And she laughs with the interviewer about loving what she calls, quote, non-canon canon, and says Legends things are mostly gone, but it's not a reason to discard it. And she acknowledges many things from Legends have made their way into Disney Star Wars canon, even in this show. Those are some of the major reveals. What do you guys think of them? Now moving on to our next Acolyte topic. Alright, so I've had my fair share of criticisms about the Acolyte, but one thing I've seen a lot of fans criticize and call flat out stupid is when May cuts her hair using the yellow lightsaber. Was it a bit goofy? Yes, of course. It's the moment she decides she is going to impersonate her sister, Osha. My first thought was that if she is genuinely trying to trick the Jedi, she still has a very distinctive tattoo on her forehead. But, as Leslye Headland recently said, Sol knows, and I think in the next episode there is no fooling. But yes, it was a pretty strange decision. An odd moment for sure. But did you know that this is not the first time in on-screen content a Force user has used a lightsaber in this way? In the 2D animated Clone Wars series, which by the way is one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars media ever created if you ask me, when Anakin is brought before the Jedi Council for promotion to Jedi Knight, Yoda cuts off his Padawan braid with his lightsaber. It's pretty dramatic, but this has happened before. I also think we need to remember that lightsabers are a Jedi's weapon, but in times of need, they're also a tool. We often talk about samurai influence on Star Wars. Well, this is another example. This is something that's been echoed by George Lucas and also by Mark Hamill when asked about Luke Skywalker's use of his lightsaber for non-combat reasons. Across Star Wars canon and legends, we've seen some pretty creative and flat-out strange uses for lightsabers outside of their explicit weaponry purpose. For light in dark environments, I guess for cutting hair, the Inquisitors using their lightsabers to fly like a helicopter. And look, regardless of the way she did it, as we go into the final 3 episodes, one of the most intriguing things Leslye Headland said is this little twin twist, the twin switcheroo, May impersonating Osha, Osha now presumably under the watchful eye of Qimir. It's going to be a different show. Everything changes. I know we talk about the tragedy of Jeki and Yord and the other Jedi, but if you're talking about the show's story and the show's structure, those were necessary to advance us to the next part of this story. I don't know what's going to happen next, but this twist does add a pretty major shocker for what's coming next. Although Qimir was unmasked, we now have to wonder, what is the title of the show alluding to, or who is it alluding to? You guys in the comments of my breakdown and in recent videos have come up with some excellent theories. We spoke about Osha, Sol potentially having a darkness within him. There's also the question of, is Venestra Rowe truly trustworthy? And as we move into episode 6, a lot of different characters are under the microscope. And something which I did find pretty fascinating is that Amanda Stenberg talks about the fact, at this point, Osha is the one who's lost. We know May's allegiance is to family and her sister. She's given up the ways of the Sith. She's going with Sol, presumably to kill the Jedi for what took place on Brendok, for brainwashing her sister. But it seems pretty clear Amanda is telling us to keep a watchful eye on Osha. She is the one lost in this. She said, quote, "She has no ability to find her way. You can't trust her logic, nor her belief system. And she's moving from an incredibly protective place to something more complicated." I do think this switcheroo is going to be the end of the show. May might become a Jedi apprentice, or just walk away from Force users. But I think Osha is absolutely in the grip of Qimir. She is what he wants, her fear, her insecurities. And Amanda goes on to say this: the power dynamics and structures that we've seen so far have now kind of been inverted, and it sets up both the characters to go on a completely different journey. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts on this and everything we spoke about in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you always.